Cutback for Vasilev, and Lukic! A banger of a strike for Jovan Lukic's first MLS goal!
It's fallen out to Westfield! Oh, wow! He's nearly taken the roof of the net off! Philadelphia pounce again!
Who gets his goal on his Union debut? The record signing, off and running in his first appearance for the club.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and your Philadelphia Union, they know who they will take on in the best of three. They will face off against the Chicago Fire, and welcome back Jack Elliott to Subaru Park this Sunday at 5:30 p.m. at Subaru Park, and it is going to be an electric atmosphere, I would imagine. We all know what playoff games are like at Subaru Park. Unfortunately, the fans were not able to experience that last season. We don't need to talk about 2024 because, look, 2025 has been electric with the Union clinching the Supporters' Shield. The Union now will have home field advantage in the playoffs, something that they didn't have in the 2022 World Cup, in the 2022 regular season. So we'll go ahead and hit on maybe some similarities back in 2022 to 2025. Similarities to when the Union last won the Supporters' Shield. So super excited, a lot to talk about with Jose Nunez and the play-by-play voice on 97.5 The Fanatic, Dave Leno, joining us once again. We promised you he would be back once playoffs start. Dave is back with us again. Dave, Jose, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate you bringing us on. And Dave, as always, it's such a treat to see you outside of the stadium, never mind through a screen, talking about not just the Union, but certainly, obviously, we'll talk about the Union, but just your experience, right? You have so much to share that is beyond the Union that it's always fascinating to pick your brain a little bit. So I appreciate you jumping on with us.
There we go. First off, you're welcome. It's the triple threat here. My mic's open, so now I'm ready to go and roar. From here in Bucks County, PA, all the way to wherever everybody's watching or listening to us right now, and maybe after the fact on replay. A delight to be with you both. You know, and I say this to your colleagues, and I really mean this to start. I'm a big fan of both of your works. You guys put in the time, the effort. You have the skills. You have the knowledge. You have the institutional knowledge, but you also have very adept awareness about what's going on with the Union. You break down your goals breakdown is fascinating. Jose, all your writings and all your the interviews that I heard you on Glenn Davis's show down in Houston the other night. So I'm a big fan of both of your works and your colleagues, and I just want to thank you both again for having me on. And I watch your program outside of when I'm on as well. So I'm revved up to get started, and let's get this playoff journey going.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, Dave. I wasn't going to mention it. Shout out. Well done, Jose, with Glenn Davis. About 14 minutes on the radio. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but you brought it up, Dave, and I think we should. That is missing so much in Philadelphia, right? 14 minutes you dedicate. Well, I mean, I know Glenn's show was, 2 hours, I think it was, but 14 minutes you're talking Philadelphia Union soccer. Like the Union, the fans, media, I would say too, would kill to have that on local radio in the city. And look, I respect what Glenn does. And I was reading the comments online. People were like, oh, how long is this going on and everything? But look, Glenn doesn't let the comments get to him. He's doing what he's passionate about, helping grow the game. And man, I so wish we had that more in local markets because look, Jose, you were talking about it. The Eagles, it doesn't know, are they up? Are they down? Who knows what they're going to be this season? The Phillies, unfortunately, get knocked out of the playoffs. And look, if people would just turn their eyes and look, there's a winning team, a team that's been winning all season long in the Philadelphia Union. Like, who cares if it's soccer? Hop on board. They're not going to turn you away. Like, the Union, these fans will take as many fans as they can get. And you can call yourself a bandwagon fan. It doesn't matter. But man, can you guys imagine what it would be like with just some local radio coverage, some local TV coverage for the Philadelphia Union, a team that has the potential to go to MLS Cup? This is a very, very good team, but yeah, we can't get that buy-in. And so I appreciate what Glenn did and having you on, Jose. And you did a good job just talking, the Chris Armas situation, all things MLS, and doing well. Talking about the 2025 Philadelphia Union season.
Yeah, it was actually such a treat. This all came about, and I remember sharing it with you, Todd. Just happenstance that Glenn saw a post I put out there, and just honestly civil discourse led to a 15-minute spot, which is awesome, right? We talked about it, and ultimately I think we both have different opinions about how that all went, and that was the beauty of it. But you're absolutely right, not to share names of any one radio station in Philadelphia, but I would much rather have the teams talk, or the stations talk about it, talk about the team, the Union, rather than dismiss the sport as a whole. So to see Glenn and what he does, and the amount of time that he spends, and how much ESPN 97.5 gives him airtime is just incredible. So it's not lost on me of just how much work he's doing out there for, honestly, a team that should be doing a lot better, especially with Jack McGlynn there, and certainly as they shed Damian Lowe, no longer employed by Houston, contract declined, or option, I should say. So, as well as Sergio Santos too. So, Penn State guy who was part of the academy, Adewesu, he also got his contract option declined. So, only one Union player remains in Houston as of now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, people were making the comments that it's Philadelphia Union West. I mean, I don't think it's that far west, central. I don't know. But people were making the joke. And to see all those names, I mean, the only current Union player now on that team is Jack McGlynn. And I do wonder, if he doesn't get injured, does Houston potentially sell him in the wintertime? He was having a good season with Houston, and did well every time he got caught up with the U.S. Men's national team. And unfortunately, Jack gets injured and misses the rest of the season, just like his buddy Quinn Sullivan. And I saw they had a joke on Instagram that said that they could rehab together. So glad to see, even though both players were injured, they could still have that type of banter. But yeah, like I said, we have a lot to talk about. And I guess the first thing that we'll talk about is Apple making their MLS playoffs available for free to all Apple TV subscribers. This is a pretty big deal, in my opinion, where if you wanted to watch MLS, you had to get the season pass. And now Apple says, you know what? If you have Apple TV, it's free to watch for everybody. And this is only good for the game, I would imagine. Right, Dave?
Absolutely. Look, we got to put more eyes on the sport. And, initially, it goes for majority of the season behind the paywall. And then, I do reads on our radio broadcast that there's a percentage off seemingly as the weeks go by. So it only helps to get, more visibility, because you're already taking the product that we have versus, the NFL, the NBA, NHL starting, and all these other great sports. So I, for one, just my journalism hat on, and just my, sports business background, I just want to get as many people watching our sport as possible to get them hooked, because I really feel like once folks take in a Union game or an MLS game, especially in person with their family or their friends, and they don't need to be like a soccer aficionado or a zealot or a diehard. You can call them the casual. You can call it the 4-for-4 fan in the Philadelphia market. But people get hooked in just my conversations. So with this, with Apple making it free, it's wonderful. But like I said, you're also going to have some games on linear television. The Union's first playoff game will also be on FS1. You can also hear us on radio and Apple TV using the home radio feed if you want to hear myself and Seba calling the game with the Union angle. But I think there's a variety of platforms that fans can get hooked on, and I hope people watch us. We're going to get a lot of what you said, Todd and Jose. You're going to get a lot of bandwagon people from Philadelphia coming on, and this is my message to a lot of Union fans. You might be disappointed that those people don't follow us throughout the year. This is even me taking off my Union broadcaster hat on, saying you need to welcome those people in and say, let's get the city and the Delaware Valley around the team. Let's catch them up to speed about what happened in 2025, or maybe you didn't watch us since we went off local TV after the 22 season. So I'd say it's an opportunity to open arms, bring everybody together, and hopefully it's going to be a fantastic atmosphere down at the game, and just have a good time watching or listening.
Dave, I kind of want to lead this conversation because I'm fascinated both on the fans, so learning more about the business side, and maybe I'm more business minded than most folks who report around the team, just because I love the angle of things, right? Of breaking it down, finding profitability, et cetera. But also finding a way to grow the sport at the same time, which is they should go hand in hand, but often the scales go this way when you're trying to do one or the other. It's not always easy to do both. Let me ask you this: with this move to put it, I guess, away from the paywall per se of MLS on Apple, but put it just on Apple as a whole, do you wish that would have been done earlier, maybe from the get-go of the entire deal?
Yeah, because there, to my knowledge, you have to pay for Apple TV, and then you have to pay for MLS Season Pass. So it's two different fees, right? That you have to pay. And if you have Apple TV, the MLS Season Pass account is a little bit less money. If you don't have Apple TV, it was a little bit more right from the get-go, whatever those figures were. I'm under the belief. I'm a young guy, but I'm an old school mentality. And I would tell you that sports is best consumed when it's over the air, linear television people can watch. And you both know, and probably a lot of people listening or watching us right now, I'm proud to say I was part of our local TV family for my first 7 seasons. We had phenomenal broadcasters, JP Dellacamera, Peter Pappas, Tommy Smith, and just my time with the Union, co-hosting with Marissa Pilla and others that have come on, Seba, Shannon Williams. Everybody did a wonderful job. Danny Higginbottom joining us in 21 as well. And I'm very grateful now in the position that I'm in when the league went behind the paywall to Apple, and Apple hired all these terrific commentators that, I've been doing radio with Seba since 2020, since MLS is back. A lot of people might forget that, but we kind of went full-time in radio with us traveling at the start of the 23 season. So that's a little context. Getting back to the question, I'm all for making this sport, Jose, accessible to everybody, especially when you're dealing with soccer in the United States. And we don't need to go down that rabbit hole, but how it compares, like I said, to ratings of the NFL, to the NBA, to the NHL, and you could even include March Madness. You can include my tennis background, what tennis provides, and I'm talking more, international sports compared to soccer. And we know what the numbers were, maybe for those that followed, maybe nationally when they were on ESPN and FS1 for the majority of time. Local shows out there, I followed all the local shows around the country. I thought everybody really did a nice job. Obviously, some markets present their soccer product different than others, and the league, for reasons that is beyond my comprehension, and I'm not in the room, decided to go behind this paywall with Apple. We know what the figures were. But what it did was a lot of people didn't want to buy the Apple product. Whether right or wrong, it's not my decision. I'm just stating a fact. And, some people got very turned off by that because in Philadelphia, it wasn't on PHL 17 or 6 ABC, or before that, we were on NBC Sports Philadelphia or Comcast Sportsnet when I first joined the team. So that's changed. So, in the beginning, look, companies, Jose, you try to make money. Everybody's out there to make a buck, and you can't fault anybody for doing that. Everybody does that, including all of us. And you're trying to capitalize on in it. So I'm biased. I love it. I love being in it. And the league is trying to make some revenue on it. Will that last? Will this be just for the playoffs next year? Will it be a little bit more accessible as far as a payment opportunity? We'll have to see. But the league and Apple, MLS, and probably others that I don't even know have their reasons, probably with consultants and agencies that they go through, why the games on TV or streaming are on what platform they are dedicated to. So I'm grateful I just want to lastly say to all the radio commentators out there, my colleagues that get to travel with their teams and be the local voice and maybe know those inside stories and get to chat with the players a little bit more often than the coaches and have that personal relationship, we can add a different angle maybe than the traditional TV broadcast, because I also do national TV broadcasts, and I know how hard that is to come into a game maybe a couple days before, and you're not going to know every storyline the local folks do, or people like yourself who are beat reporters who cover the team. And that's not putting anything against any of the national people. They just have a lot of other things going on. They're there to do an assignment and get out. That's just the way it is, and they're there to call the game. So we'll see how it goes for the future of this. But like I said, I think now with the playoffs, you're going to see more games, I think, as the playoffs go on linear TV, in addition to Apple, in addition to the local products. And for me, that's a win-win for everybody.
What's really interesting. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Todd.
Dave brought up actually a really good point, because I mean, people that have listened to this podcast for a while, it's like, I used to bring on those local TV guys, your Tyler Tarrans of the world. Jordan Angeli's been on this show. I've had Kendra D. St. Albin, and I know Tyler and Kendra are both with Apple TV. Jordan's doing things with the NWSL with JP. I brought on Chris Duran, who's still doing radio play-by-play for Columbus. I've had on Glenn Crooks and Roberto Abramovitz, both commentators for New York City. And it's like, you're absolutely right, Dave. These people, and especially the guys on TV, when everything was in market, they know the team sometimes better than anybody else. And you're right. When you focus on that one team, you get more knowledge. You have more inside information. And that's why I would love all the time bringing on these commentators, because they could give little bits of tidbits that maybe you can't get anyplace else and everything, just because, like yourself, Dave, you're down there at training once, maybe twice a week and everything. You're seeing what's going on. You're talking to the coaching staff, the players and everything. So you have a real feel on the inside information. And that's not a knock on, like you said, these guys calling the games nationally, but so many times I'll see commentators come in there, say their quick hellos straight into the booth. After the game's done, they're off to the airport, on to their next assignment. And so that's just the day and age that we live in now. But Jose, go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say is for as I don't know if the word is hated, but as maligned as the Apple deal is, Dave, you talk about accessibility, but my gosh, I don't think I can stress that point enough about what that's done for the sport in a lot of ways, right? Just take a look at how difficult it is to actually watch every single NBA game this season with how many services you need to have, right? There was a funny cartoon. I forget which newspaper I was reading, but it was a post. It was two fans staring at a light post, and it had different arrows, like you see, with like destinations at certain spots. And it was two fans for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and it said what day of the week, which app they had to use to be able to watch the game, which is
That's
comical. It's pretty comical, but and pretty telling of how NBA fans feel about the ability to be able to watch, whereas MLS fans and us on the journalistic side, and you, Dave, even for your own research, right? How easy it is to just log into a single app and be able to watch every single game on replay with both languages. And language is the other point I was going to bring out, just how wonderful it is for folks like myself, right? I don't speak Spanish every single day, but for me to keep that muscle flexed, I watch the games in Spanish, and I enjoy watching them in Spanish. I record your feed separately so I can watch and listen to it later as well. But the ability to be able to watch it in Spanish is just so good. It feels great. And how many more people is that tapping into the market? Now, I could go on a 25-minute rant about what else the Philadelphia Union specifically could be doing for the Latino market. I know that they do some, probably could do a lot more, but that's a different conversation altogether. Dave, I want to ask you about this. What do you make about MLS choosing not to have any playoff games this Saturday?
Yeah, I don't look, going up against the World Series and some other things, college football. I was a little surprised when the schedule came out that there wasn't Saturday soccer. I was looking forward to it because I'm not just an MLS broadcaster, but I'm a fan of the sport too. And I was looking forward to, as I was doing my final notes, getting ready to watch some Saturday soccer. That's not the case. So a little surprised. And, like Jose, Todd, at these these are big decisions. When these playoff schedules come out, this is not something that was just thought about last week or 2 weeks ago. So this was on their docket for, it had to be, and this is just conjecture, obviously, on my part, but a long time. And, for me, I have no problem spacing it out. The only thing when it comes to the schedule that I kind of give pause at is, so for example, if the Union sweep Chicago in the first 2 games, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but we would have a break for about 2+ weeks with the international window coming in. And I think for MLS and this whole talk, again, another kind of topic about changing to the European calendar, but you're going up against these other sports, right, is how do we maximize the visibility of our playoffs? Obviously different in Europe. The Union would have won, and we won our shield, we won the league, it would be over, right? But in America, we have a playoff system, which to me is, as an American, is still very thrilling. And I love watching the playoffs, even though the Union weren't in it last year. I still watched and followed. So I'm glad that we have a weekend game, putting back on my Union hat as opposed to like a Monday night or Tuesday. I think in our market, I know the Eagles play at 1:00. And for those maybe watching us outside the Philly area that don't know, when the Eagles play, it's kind of like time, stands still and everybody's focused on the Eagles, but they're at 1. We're later, closer to 6 p.m. local time. And you know what? And at the end of the day, and you both know this, we're not competing against fans rushing out of Lincoln Financial Field, coming down 20 minutes to Subaru Park. It's just our fans are going to be dedicated and ready to go for our soccer. And we have fans like me who love the Eagles and will listen on radio on my drive down to Chester on Sunday. But Jose, they got their reasons why they didn't want to do it on Saturday, I guess, and they're spreading out this whole playoff schedule. I just wish, kind of like maybe a couple of years ago, where it was kind of like bing bang boom, and there was so much momentum, and like every game I felt like there was something on all the night. Like I love the wild card round the other night, watching Chicago, and then I put on the Portland RSL game, both 3-1 results, but I enjoyed that back to back. I think that was great, just as somebody from outside of those teams consuming the product. So, no Saturday, but, we'll watch the other nights, though. And I'll be watching, as I'm sure you guys will be following as well.
No, absolutely. I guess the last piece of context I'll add before we change topics, MLS came out today with some statistics on their broadcast or I guess their audience, and they saw year over year a 29% increase, though it's I'm intrigued about those numbers because they're not apples to apples, right? So much has changed in the way that they broadcast this year versus last year in terms of having the replays, whatever it is, 24 hours, 48 hours later on linear TV, never mind having more games on linear TV during, the same time, et cetera. I'm intrigued to see what MLS does in terms of, and this year specifically, if I recall, this is the first year that there's an Android specific app for MLS or Apple TV specifically. So that's another thing. So I'm intrigued to see how this all comes down next year. And really, as I sort of workshop this out loud, if they ever decide to just do team specific plans, should you only want to support and watch one team, if they could just find a cheaper subscription for you. I know it's not maybe the smartest way to go about it, but it would be a way to get more people in at a lower price point than having to get everybody, put their shoulder into it and have to subscribe for every single game that they're not really watching. I mean, I think about, season ticket holders. Would it make more sense for them to get the Union specific package for away games or the whole entire league at once, right? What would be more appealing to them versus the, average person who's out of market? I'm just so intrigued how they go about making these numbers look better, especially since Apple continues to compete against itself in the streaming wars by adding Formula One into its portfolio.
Yeah. Jose, the key word is accessibility, right? How can we as a league, and let's just say we here for a second, we all love this sport. How can we get more eyeballs on it? And if that means, I always think of myself, when I think of sports media and business, you always got to think of how can somebody consume your product that maybe can't afford it at the level that maybe somebody else can? You got to think of the little guy or the little girl out there. And if that means team-specific plans where you can watch only Philadelphia Union home and road games on Apple TV, MLS Season Pass for $9.99 per month, as opposed to a larger fee, and that's the way it is, I'm all for it. I do want to compliment what you said a moment ago about Apple. And I can tell you just a little behind the scenes as a broadcaster, I love the fact, maybe different from my local TV days, where it is, to me, now maybe not for everybody, but to me, it's relatively easy to go back and watch full game replays on the app, on MLS Season Pass, to listen in English, to listen and call games for Apple, and they do a fabulous job. There was also French, might add, the first year that Seba called as well, and they kind of took that away. I'm not part of Apple, but I was told maybe at one point they're thinking about other languages as well. Maybe Jose and Todd, that in addition to that. So I'm grateful that there's so many different ways that you can consume this product: radio, English, Spanish. Also, I do want to mention that Apple also took out, which was a good thing, and I think a problem with local TV. And we know some of our friends were involved in this, is like blackouts, right? Local blackouts in certain markets. So Apple, kind of took that away. And our folks internationally, there was that uptick when Messi came. And you know what? I think that's an all positive thing. Again, you're getting more viewers on MLS that maybe never watched our domestic league before. And people from around the world can consume that product. How about the players, the athletes across all these great teams in our league, where their families, their internationals, their families back home. You can think of, from just the Union standpoint, I'm going to Watu Makanya in South Africa. You could think of Uwa's family over in Denmark, Glesnes in Norway, and we keep going on and on and on, and obviously other players as well from their respective teams. You couldn't do that with local TV, to my knowledge, unless you had the black box, if you will, back in the day. So I think for Apple, that is a huge positive. The picture quality is always great. Can there be improvements in all facets? Yeah, just like when there was on local TV. But going back to the accessibility, that's what I want to see. I want it to be like I'm walking into a restaurant, a bar, anywhere, at a friend's house, and the game can easily be on, whether it's on your buddy's iPad or on TV, just somewhere on your phone. What I love is sometimes I'm going out and I got my phone with me, and I'll get an alert that I don't know, Red Bull's about to play New York City in the Hudson River Derby, and it comes on with one click. I can go to the MLS app. It says watch now on Apple. Click, and it's there. Couldn't do that with local TV. So that's where, even though I love and miss maybe my local TV family, I do have to give props to the innovation and the advanced technology by MLS, by Apple, and all the folks that made that possible. So a tip of the cap to them for doing that, because times are changing. This is 2025. Sports media is changing. This is not MLS, like you said, Jose, with the NBA. Look, on Apple TV on Friday nights, folks didn't watch Philadelphia Phillies games because on Friday sometimes they were on Apple and didn't care. But if you had Apple, you get the product, right? Some people just went to listen to the radio broadcast. So we'll see where the future holds, and maybe if all these different streaming services come together. Again, that's a different topic, but that's a cable and streaming topic. So we'll see where MLS goes in the future, but it's out there. If you want it, you can get it. And to me, it's still a great product. So I really hope people follow the playoffs, that even if you didn't watch the regular season.
Yeah, I've been intrigued with the transparency that we've seen from MLS the last 2 years. I mean, you look at the roster profiles that MLS started announcing last year. You look at the game totals that teams have available. It started this year that MLS started talking about that. But then you look at this list that Jose was talking about, where MLS starts talking about oh, this is the season ranking second highest ever in total attendance in MLS history with 11.2 million fans, almost 22,000 fans per match. Just talking about over 11 million fans tuning in, watching these games. I mean, and you talked about it, Dave. I mean, how big of a hit that is. Just no blackouts. People can watch this worldwide. And you had mentioned earlier on in the show how you're very thankful for how the union allows you and your broadcast partners to travel around with the team to different away stadiums. And you've been to every away stadium but Vancouver, correct me if I'm wrong. So you've been to quite a few stadiums this season. And I'm sure your eyes could back up what these numbers are showing for MLS that these stadiums are pretty packed, if not completely sold out.
Absolutely. I will say that in most markets, the attendance is terrific. And now that we get to travel, I get to see that behind the scenes, what that's like, what that energy is like on the concourse before the fans come in. Because, I'm there early at the stadiums, especially, both home, I'm there early, and obviously on the road, I'm several hours early prior to kickoff too. And you can just feed off the energy by these great fans across the league and how they rush in to their supporters section. Or, you get a kid wearing a jersey of his favorite player. I smile at that with two young kids of my own. And I think, the stadiums all have their uniqueness, Todd and José, which is cool. They got character. Some of your older stadiums still give me that throwback to when I first got in the league. And some of these newer stadiums, like a Nashville, Columbus, TQL at Cincinnati, Austin, we went to a couple years ago. And others are like, wow, this is really where it's going. Or what's New York City going to be like with their stadium in 27? Wow, the Red Bulls, now Sports Illustrated Stadium has that European feel. That's terrific. Some are downtown. Some are away from downtown. It is what it is. Some are in NFL venues. Even the ones that maybe have challenging attendance numbers, it's still a delight, for me. I'll just speak to me personally, to be in a Gillette Stadium, to be in a Soldier Field, where maybe those attendance numbers aren't like some of the other clubs that we know across the league. So I would say that the support for the game is there across the country, and into Canada and into Mexico, what we've seen with Leagues Cup, right? And the several iterations of that. And I think that this is what I said to start the show. For those that aren't maybe the biggest soccer fans, but aren't just sporting fans, if you go to an MLS game, I really believe, and I say this to a lot of people I know who are not maybe soccer people, but just love all sports or just love an event. You got to go. And you can feed off the energy, the singing, the amount, all walks of life coming together. Like José pointed out, could some folks across the league promote better in other areas? Absolutely. And that's not just soccer. That's all sports. That's all life, right? But attendance, Todd, I think, especially on the road, I love it. Of course you get, just call it what it is. Sometimes there's an egg and there's, not a lot of folks in the stands like our U.S. Open Cup semifinal on a Tuesday in Nashville, for example. I was gutted for Nashville. And I say that because I wanted to see a big crowd, hostile environment, see how the Union could bounce back from the Vancouver game. And granted, we lost that game, but there weren't a lot of people in the building. So I love the fact that this league does. I think the teams, and I'm in it, so you can say this is an MLS broadcaster talking, but I think a lot of these teams across the league do a wonderful job in their markets getting people into the building. Let's put the other stuff, ratings and all that aside for a second. I think the building experience, the entertainment value, I think is there. And it's a wonderful product for all walks of life, young and those of our veterans in ages to consume.
I think that's bang on. If anything, Dave, what I would say is that Jay and company, when they were building that stadium, I bet they wished they would have known how big this was going to get, right? And maybe add a few thousand more spots to that stadium, considering that average number, right, of the 22,000. I'm sure there's some outliers there that are dragging the number up, especially when they're moving games to football stadiums like they did in Kansas City and Chicago, I think this year were two games that got moved to football stadiums, if I recall correctly. So those are probably just completely moving that figure up higher. Dave, I think where I want to take this now is sort of thinking about 2025, regular season specifically, and kind of pick your brain about the correlation and the differences since you've been around the team during these special years of 2020 and certainly 2022. What are some things that you're seeing that are similar with this team to 2025 to the other two, I guess, hardware winning seasons?
Yeah. So 20, we caught a lot from the stadium, Seb and I, and the Union, if you remember, I believe went to the semifinals of MLS is Back, and I think lost to eventual champions. I think it was Portland who won MLS is Back down in Disney. And then we get the 1 seed, win the Shield, and folks can say, oh, it was the 23-24 game regular season during COVID. You win the Shield, and then we get bounced out of the first round of the playoffs to New England. And that still haunts me, Jose, to your question. And some people ask me, hey, do you have that feeling like, is this going to be 2020 all over again? And I think it's apples to oranges. I think it's even in comparison. Because that was a pandemic. That was a 23-24 game schedule. They played a lot in Florida in a bubble. Granted, we did win the Shield that year. I still think it was a Shield. It was just, at a very bad time in our country's history, in the world's history, right, with COVID. In 22, you got the career years of Ua, Gazdag, and Carranza, right, all scoring over 20 goals. That's the big thing. And all the over 70 goals, how you made Subaru Park a fortress. That, to me, was the big sticking point there, how Jose Martinez locked down the midfield and the run to MLS Cup in our playoff journey that year. That, to me, really stands out. What's different, Jose, to your question is, this year, unlike 22, to me, is not about all that goal scoring, right? What did the Union have? 18 different goal scorers. We've allowed a league low 35 goals. I'm going through all the numbers here. We've only lost one game at home all year, 12-1-4. The only loss was to Nashville in March. Defensively, we got so much better versus 24, right? Where the year started and ended on an own goal. This year, we get 14 shutouts, 8 with Blake, 6 with Rick. The emergence of Noetu Makanya, how they filled the void of Jose Martinez with finding from Serbia Jovan Lukic, Stanley's second year, but really the first full year of MLS, getting Bruno Damiani in. And the Union staff will tell you this. We are, and this is no secret to anybody. The Union don't have the 5, the 10, the 15, the $20 million player on their team. Okay, these are guys, some of which they all, to me, make a great ton of money, just, from a broadcaster versus an athlete standpoint. But I think there's something to be said about the grittiness of this team, how they come together. And, you have the 18 different goal scorers on the team. The resiliency, Jose and Todd, how they didn't lose more than 2 straight games all year long. 22, you were putting up 6-goal games. Remember, we beat DC 7-0, 6-0. You beat Houston 6-0. I think they put up 6 against Colorado as well. So that 22 was just so much fireworks. Somebody's writing in the chat that only 5 losses in 2022 was an amazing, amazing season, setting all those records. Absolutely. And hats off to the Union. I wish they won MLS Cup that year. And I wish the tiebreakers fell in our favor, that we could have hosted MLS Cup in 22. And that's different, right? In 25, everything comes through our house. God willing, we can get there. But what's different about this team? What's different is in 24, we got away a little bit from the ethos and the methodology of the team. What is that? Well, we kind of played a little bit more in possession last year, right? Just maybe out of necessity. There was injuries. Blake only played 13 games. There were other injuries factoring in. We relinquished so many late goals. You think of a lot of the games up 2-1 against Miami. You're up 3-1 in Chicago, losing 4-3. We can go on and on and on about what went down in 24. I really don't want to recollect too much because I want to center on 25. But this year, flourishing more in transition, pressing higher up the field, scoring maybe a little bit more, dare I say, on set pieces this year than we've done. Even going back, I don't know what you guys would break it down probably better than me about set pieces 22, set pieces last year, all compared to set pieces what we've done in 25. Maybe you do have those numbers on the ready. But we've done a fabulous job at that. How many points did we drop last year, guys, from winning positions? What was it, like 20? We looked at it in Columbus, Todd. It wasn't like 22, 23 points last year for winning positions. And what is it this year? It's under 10.
It's like 8. Yeah. Kyle Almany and I are tracking it.
Yeah. And we spoke with Kyle and Jillian on their pod. And so I would say, and you got to give credit to the players top to bottom. The depth this year, Jose, Todd, is so different. I think it's even different than the 22 team. I really do. Does the injury to Quinn sting? 100% with his playmaking abilities. You guys know his game, how he can break down, he can cross the ball, the wicked right foot from distance, right, the step overs, all the majestic moves that Quinn can provide. That's a loss. But for those that, nationally didn't give us a shot with a new coach, new system going from the 4-4-2 diamond to the 4-2-2, how it's worked out this year. I remember game 1 where we won at Orlando 4-2, and that shocked the league. Because Orlando went, obviously, to the conference finals last year and fell to the Red Bulls, Red Bulls being the 7th seed and lost to Galaxy. So I give this staff, man, I really do. And yeah, I'm the Union broadcaster, but I'm going to tell you, as somebody who gets to talk to these guys, I give that staff and these players a ton of credit for the buy-in both ways, from the buy-in from the players, like the veterans, like a Bedoya, like a Glesnes, like a Blake, like a Wagner, to Bradley and his staff, to Sean Rooney, to Mitch Hildebrand, to Ernst and Matt, to Chris in the scouting department, and all down the line. And then the players buying into the coaches, but the coaches also saying, yeah, this is what you guys have done here too. And Jose, that goes back just in summation to go back to what you've done as an organization in Philly in 20, in 22, and also before the legends before that, like a Seba and Shane, and who I work with, and the others that were here even before my time with the Union, and building upon that. And I think what folks need, these guys genuinely like each other. And I'm not saying they didn't like each other before. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying this year, these guys, what I see, they want to keep going for more. And just because they were at the top spot seemingly all season long, Bradley would always say, that line, and he's probably said it to you guys in the press room, we want to be the hunters all the time, not the hunted, even though we were the 1 seed. And I see it training when I'm down there once or twice a week. That motivation, the staff tells me sometimes they got to peel them back a little bit on a Wednesday because the competitive juices, they're flying, they're going hard. And we need to say, hey, we need to save this closer to match day. And for a lot of those reasons that I just explained, I think it's why we are where we are. And, anything can happen in the playoffs, and that's across all sports. So we'll see how it shakes out.
Before I turn it to Todd, one thing I do want to mention that continues to add to the case on how special this 2025 team, regular season at least so far, feels so special. It's, yes, Quinn Sullivan's injury, the retention of sure, Jim, legendary coach, decade plus with the team and the area, et cetera. The retention of staff, I think, was massive of the right pieces that stuck around, whether, they really wanted to or were contractually, obligated, et cetera. That's a different conversation altogether, but the retention was awesome. But also some other blows of players that maybe they were banking on to have a higher role, and also the stepping up of players, right? I know we've talked to till our faces turn blue, Todd, about Olwethu and how incredible he has been this year and stepping up and becoming what should have been a Defender of the Year candidate, in my opinion, even over Glesnes, to be completely blunt and frank with the listeners. But also the blows, right? Jan Glavinovic. I think that's a huge piece that not many people are talking about, right? How much was invested in him on a loan, and potentially prior to Bruno's purchase, if they would have exercised that purchase option, as I understand it, as sources have told me, he would have been more expensive in today's dollars than Mikel Uhre when they bought him. So it would have been a record-setting type of purchase should Jan Glavinovic worked out at the time. So really, really fascinating how they've been able to go about this despite the different blows that they've had throughout the season. And again, another piece that's not talked about so much is just how much Bradley has taken advantage of only having 2 competitions on like the those thinner years of Jim and being, what was the saying that he would say all the time, Todd? Being the bride left at the altar, I think was sort of what he would say, right? Of getting so close to it and ultimately not getting it done. But nonetheless, just wanted to articulate those points because I think they're incredibly important to add context to how incredible this 2025 year has been altogether.
Yeah, because the one year, wasn't it, Todd and Jose, didn't we play close to 60 matches the one year across all competitions? And that's tough, right, on the body and everything. And MLS, and you talk to staffs across the league, you still got to manage those schedules. I think they're still figuring that out. If they decide, in a couple of years, maybe after the World Cup, if they go to the European calendar, how does that shape up? Where does Leagues Cup factor in? Where does CONCACAF Champions Cup factor in? The lessening of the schedule, Jose, I think that helps. It's called what it is on the body and all the travel that we endure in MLS across our great country. So I think it helps. You still got to go out there and win games, though. And if you look at the point totals, right, of last year in the East to this year, the East, man, it's so competitive, right? Point totals are so drastic. It's amazing the difference, and I think that you tip your cap from top down to all these clubs. I think Charlotte is so happy that they beat us. They really wanted a home, playoff. They wanted that home field advantage in the first run against New York City. They didn't want to go to Yankee Stadium for 2 in a row or for 2 of the 3 if the game 3 went out there. So. It's amazing. There are a lot of great storylines on the East, ton of great storylines on the Western Conference as well. And I'm excited for the playoffs to begin. And, I like, continuing the theme with the Union that we've continued to do pretty well on the road. We did that in 22, kind of maybe faltered a little bit last year, but we got back to that this year. Yeah, for as much as maybe we've let some goals late in halves this year. We've also scored our share of late goals as well. Marcus Anderson against Charlotte, 98th minute. Kai Wagner up in Toronto. Others too were there. So, what's to Makanya, I believe, an Open Cup play. Scored against the Red Bulls late. I was down at the stadium after the postponed game with my son watching. So. Happy for these guys, and I'm fascinated to see now that kind of we're the top dog to see where it takes us. But I will tell you, lastly, on this point, and I know I keep going on. I apologize for that. I'm just excited to talk to you guys. I throw the seeds out the window. I really do. I give respect to all these clubs, and I really do. And I'm a nice guy, but I truly mean that. Seeding doesn't mean a damn to me. You have to play the game. Chicago's going to be a really tough opponent. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit later. But, you saw what the Red Bulls did under Sandro last year as a 7 seed, going all the way to MLS Cup. This year, not making the playoffs. Galaxy, turmoil of the year this year. Last year, winning the whole thing. So we'll see what happens across the league when it comes to the playoffs. But I really don't put too much stock in the seeding. Just got to go in the matchup and how teams shake up tactically against one another. And then ultimately, got to go play the game.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dave. And I'm glad you guys were having a back and forth there so I could look up these set piece numbers for you back in 2020, 2022, and 2025. So in
Let's
2020,
hear 'em.
because obviously that was the COVID year, so you only played 23 games. The Union scored 17% of their goals from the set pieces, 7 goals that season. In 2022, they scored 17% of their goals from set pieces. They scored 12. And then this season, exactly where Bradley Cornell wants them, 30% from set pieces, 17, which is the second most in the league. Minnesota's up there with 22, which is insane. 22 set piece goals. Minnesota scored 56 goals total, so one less than the Union, and they've scored 5 more set pieces than the Union. I mean, the Union were on a roll there. You guys know this, where they were scoring, it felt like every single game, set piece, set piece, set piece. Kai Wagner, excellent from the corner kicks. You had, obviously, that free kick from Kai Wagner against Chicago Fire, where Olaski lays it off to Wagner, and then he blasts it from outside the 18-yard box and beats Chris Brady. So, and this team's definitely capitalized on set-piece opportunities, just like they have since 2021 when Frank Leich joined, or was it 2020? I can't remember. Frank's been here for a while. But yeah, he's been a godsend to this team on set pieces, both defending and attacking. And Jose brought it up. I mean, I think that's huge for Bradley Cornell to retain both. Phil Wedden does an excellent job with the goalkeepers. He's been around both at the national level and with MLS, his experience here. And so having both of those guys still in your coaching staff, I think definitely helped Bradley Cornell adjust a little bit more easily than maybe bring in a whole brand new coaching staff. You had mentioned Sean Rooney joining over, Mitch Hildebrand, both coming over from St. Louis City. And I'm sure, that's comfort for Bradley Cornell. But again, still having 2 coaches that have the respect of the locker room, especially a leader like Andre Blake, your captain for most part of the season, to still have him have Phil Wedden and the relationship those two have had, and to see Andre's level pretty much go up to a higher level since Phil Wedden's taken over as the goalkeeping coach for this team. Yeah, I think you're just seeing a cog in the machine. It's all coming together, and because of that, we're seeing the Union have a pretty special season, and hopefully it continues throughout the playoffs. But let's go ahead and talk about that Philadelphia Union versus Chicago Fire best of 3 preview match. Like I mentioned, first game this Sunday at 5:30 p.m. These two teams played twice this season. The Union won away to Chicago, won 1-0 with a Bruno Damiani penalty kick, and then the Union come back home at Subaru Park in August and defeat Chicago Fire 4-0. We all know that Chicago is one of the best teams on the road in MLS this season. Wasn't so much the case back in August. You saw Ty Baribo open the scoring with that Kai Wagner, Ty Baribo connection. Once again, we've seen it plentiful this season. Danley John Jock gets on the score sheet. Kai Wagner, we mentioned it from that long distance shot. Then you also had a long distance shot from Milan Olaski. But let's not forget either, guys. The Union go into the half up 1-0. And then really the second half, the first real chance of that game, it fell to Chicago, where Sergio Oriel, he hits the post, the crossbar in the 57th, 58th minute, and it could have tied the game up 1-1, and who knows what would have happened there. And moments later, the Union get that free kick goal from Kai Wagner with Olaski laying it off, and then it was goals galore for the Union. But these two teams have played pretty tough matches, and yes, I know that's probably crazy to say when you look at a 4-0 scoreline, but that game could have been different. And Chicago's a team that they have a brilliant attack in Kuipers and Zinkelnacher and Bamba. And we saw last night Brian Gutierrez, a player that was fighting for a Gold Cup spot and just missed out. Quinn Sullivan getting the spot over him this summer at the Gold Cup with the national team. Brian Gutierrez looked excellent last night with Chicago against Orlando City, but I was a little bit surprised too, because Jose has said it multiple times on the show to me in private about the attack of Orlando City with Ojeda, with Pasalic, with Muriel, with Duncan McGuire. That's a promising attack there in Orlando too. And you could even argue that maybe they have a little bit more speed than Chicago Fire. But I was surprised to only see Orlando last night only get 1 goal. But look, this is going to be an excellent matchup. And like I had mentioned in the show, will Jack Elliott and the Fire get revenge on the Union after the Union defeated them twice? And that's a huge storyline. Jack Elliott coming back. And you know that, yeah, he has a lot of friendships here, a lot of family, I'd imagine, still in the Philadelphia area. But with a new team, the captain of his team, Greg Berhalter's done wonders with a Chicago Fire team that hasn't been in the playoffs since 2017. You got to imagine that Jack Elliott would like to make a statement this weekend against the Union at Subaru Park.
Jose, I'm curious what you think of this matchup as well. I can tell you, Todd, to your fantastic points there, that it's going to be a tough series. And like I said earlier, I give credit to Chicago and what they've endured. They're a team that was so good on the road, 9 road wins, which is one more, by the way, than the Union in the regular season. But the Achilles heel for them was they weren't winning home games this year. The other point is somebody puts in the chat, and rightly, they did switch later on to a back 3. You can call it a back 5. Last game they played with a back 4. They also acquired Joel Waterman as well next to Elliott. So we'll see what Berhalter does, because both of you know a lot of teams sometimes will play us with a back 3 as opposed to a back 4. The attack for Chicago to me stands out. You mentioned all the players that they have. Kuipers with the 17 goals gets 2. And how about the job that he does to run right at Pedro Gallese and bang that in? I was a little surprised. I don't know if you guys caught the game live watching that Orlando didn't go. I know they were on the road and maybe they were letting the game come to them a little bit. But with the speed, with the Ojedas there, and the others on their squad, and Duncan McGuire, and more, Otto Uho and others in the midfield, I think they're terrific as well. Why they didn't go out the gate a little bit stronger to me and go after Chicago a little bit more. It just seemed like Chicago at home was dictating throughout. I was a little surprised from that approach from Orlando. And I give Chicago credit. They didn't play at Soldier Field. They did play at SeatGeek, and I was told there 2 would be Bridgeview as well, not Soldier Field 2 for our series. But they have you're right about the 4-0 game. They did a chance at Chicago. And, halting a guy like Sinker Knuckle. Gutierrez plays a through ball as good as anybody, can hit from the outside as a young U.S. youth international. A Kuipers, what he can do up top. A Bamba with the speed on the left-hand side and the guys out of the midfield for them. Where I think the Union maybe can hurt them a little bit, Todd and Jose, is in the transition game. Whether they play with a back 3 or a back 4. Do they leave Elliott or Waterman isolated on an island? Because both of you know, tactically, we can break it down, but they'll get a Jonathan Dean up high on the right should he start, or a Gutman who played college soccer at IU and other teams, right? He gets advanced on the left. So, sometimes you leave Elliott, Waterman back there. Maybe it's a chance for the Union to, quickly counter against them or work in transition, create those numerical advantages, whether centrally or on the width of the pitch, to score against Chicago. And I think stylistically, that's why some folks may say, for the Union standpoint, it's a better matchup against Chicago as it would be against Orlando, because they play maybe a little bit differently out of the back. Chicago also comes in with a ton of momentum. They're, I believe, including the wild card game, they're now unbeaten the last 6 games, I think, or close to that, 5 or 6. Whereas Orlando was like only 1 win in their last 8 or 9 coming in to that wild card game. So I think that the Union's going to dictate being at home, and I think that it's the playoffs time, and there's going to be chances for both these clubs because I think they're both good in the attack. For the Union is, how do we get service to our strikers early on in this game? Regardless of whether it's Baribo, Ua, Damiani, whoever starts up top, whoever's going to factor in. We need to get those guys involved, just not their work rate off the ball, but how do we get them on the ball? And the last thing I'll say tactically, and you guys can agree or disagree, I don't think Chicago is going to come in and say, like other teams do, like a Nashville, for example, and say, hey, we're going to set up a mid to low block. Union, you have the ball with Glezos Macania. You play out of the back and string 4 or 5 passes go up the field. I don't see them doing that. Maybe they will. But I think both these teams have quality attacks. And like I said, I think it's going to be a fun series.
On the wild card game, I think the biggest issue for Orlando unfortunately happened before the season even started with Todd, you probably recall this because I remember sending you the clip, but Wilder Cartagena ended up tearing his ACL. I think it was against Fluminense actually in the preseason tournament that they always have out in Orlando. So missing him as a defensive mid who put up, I think, nearly 2,400 minutes last year is just an unbelievable loss for a team that, you know, sort of uses that pivot to cover for a lot of the speed that we were just talking about. So very, very difficult. And even in again, Todd and I talk a lot during these games, Dave, so I apologize that I keep referring it that way. But just watching that match last night, we jokingly said to each other that everybody loves the XG conversation. It's the hottest thing to talk about. I get that. But that Chicago XG must have been unbelievable for that first half because of how many chances they were just either hitting the post, being inches away. Gallese was playing on top of his head for a little while there, those first 45 minutes. And once the levies went up, it just sort of started flooding in. But with this matchup, I think, you know, Todd, you sort of referred to it too. And Dave, you mentioned it too. It's just so special in terms of the storylines, right? Here comes Jack Elliott being the captain of the opposing team on a playoff match the first year that he has departed. And, you know, whether it was ever reported or just things I've heard, how he, you know, wanted to stay, wanted a raise. And I think it was actually even Ernst who said it, Todd. Was it during one of the press conferences where like they just couldn't meet his salary valuation?
Yeah, it was early in the season or off season. Yeah.
I think I recall that, but you know, just here comes the guy who wanted to get paid more and ultimately ended up taking a contract with Chicago, uprooting his family. I think is his wife's name Shelby? Is that
Shelby? Yeah.
Yeah, their new baby too, going to Chicago, now coming back. The storylines are just through the roof when it comes to it. And such a fun matchup too, because of all the attacking opportunities and all the players. Will they do a low block, to your point, Dave? I think that they'll probably test it at some point, right? Because if you watched some of that Charlotte game and some other matches throughout the season, that seems to be sort of the difficult piece for Philadelphia to sort out, especially when they rely so much on set pieces, never mind breaking you down or breaking you down and just hitting you on the counter. So not much for me to add when it comes to the tactics. I'm just honestly, not just this matchup, but looking at the playoffs as a whole, just, I know we can once again yell about it till our face turn blue about the 3 matches in the first round, the wait in between. But there's some very exciting matchups, the way that the draw or the seeding happened this year. And sure, it doesn't mean much, but it's fun to see 3 potential matches of the Hell is Real Derby. That is so exciting to me, right? How fun that's going to be, seeing Miami and Nashville go at it again. Leagues Cup a couple of years ago, right? Todd, I remember that actually because we went into a press conference thinking that one team won it, only to then come out and a different team won it because of penalty shootouts or something crazy had happened. I can't remember how it all worked out. Never mind the West, which is also a bit of a meat grinder here with, Portland trying to get some revenge on San Diego just from this past weekend. Los Angeles with Boanga and Sonny just tearing it up. Vancouver apparently selling out the stadium, so 30,000 plus going to be there this weekend, which is incredible. And as you look, as you know, teams are going to continue to go forward, just how can you not want to watch this? And sure, you can be critical about the best of 3, but ultimately the matchups are just so enticing to want to watch it all. So I'm just eager to hear your thoughts, Todd, overall.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think Thomas Mueller came out in his press conference and said that he wishes that there would be more of a home and away leg, not a single elimination. So it's interesting to see a high profile player in Thomas Mueller, who I guess it makes sense. You're coming over from playing Champions League where it is home and away and everything. And you come over to America where, look, I'm somebody that likes that format of single elimination, and look how well it was for the Union back in 2022. But I understand why Apple said, let's get this best of 3 in here. More games means more people are tuning into the product. So it makes sense on a money standpoint for me. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be an exciting playoffs. You guys have touched on it. The hell is real derby to get it this early on in the playoffs. I think if you ask the Union, this is probably the side of the bracket that they would want to be on, not to sleep on a Chicago or Charlotte or New York City, because they're going to be tough opponents if the Union do get past Chicago Fire. But you would much rather have, in my opinion, Nashville and Miami beating up on each other, Columbus and Cincinnati beating up on each other. And if you make it all the way to an Eastern Conference final, hopefully those teams have went to best of 3 series. And you had mentioned it, Dave, earlier on the show, where the conference semifinals doesn't start until November 22nd. And so if you have to go to a best of 3, it could go all the way until November 9th. And yes, you have the international break. And so I don't know. I mean, not saying that the Union would want to lose one of these games on purpose. You never want that to happen. But man, you guys recall what happened back in 2020 when the Union had 16 days off. And yes, I know they played New England 5 times that season with MLS's back and then the regular season. And then we all know what happens in the first playoff game. And I think a lot of that has to do with the long layoff the Union had. You look at the following year in 2021, same thing happened to New England when they won the Supporters' Shield. I believe they had 21 days off and they lost the first game. And so, yeah, I guess it's all about what team comes out of that international break still just with that momentum, and can they carry that on throughout the playoffs? And, it's nothing you can do about an international break. You got to respect it. It's an official FIFA break and everything. But yeah, I mean, if the Union did win the first 2 games in the series, I do wonder what a long layoff would do for this team. We've seen in the past that the Union have struggled off of long layoffs, and hopefully that doesn't happen come playoff time. But yeah, regardless, this is I think the side the Union would want to be on. And yeah, just so many intriguing games here. And I saw somebody in the comments, Vancouver and Dallas fascinates them. I think if I didn't say Cincinnati and Columbus, I think, yeah, Vancouver and Dallas would be the fascinating game for me as well, because Dallas had went on a heater here the last 10 games, really went on a run to get into the playoffs. And yeah, they're a team that has a good attack too. And so, yeah, a lot of people are going to say Vancouver because of what Mueller's done, what Sebastian Berhalter's done for that team throughout this season. And Jasper's done an excellent job. I see he's up there for Coach of the Year, and we'll see if he winds up winning it. Does Bradley Carnell win it, or does Mikey Varis with San Diego win it? But yeah, intriguing matchups for the playoffs, and can't wait to watch, and can't wait to be at the stadium and listening to your calls, Dave. And hopefully you have plenty of Union goals to call this Sunday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I got to tell you, from the Union's perspective, you guys broke that down masterfully, by the way. And, sometimes when we're in the East, we lose sight of the West, but you guys did a great job. How about the run, Seattle, the highs and lows of their season, right? And then to get in, you got St. Clair between the sticks from Minnesota has been terrific. So a ton of great matchups. And, potentially, and again, this is my Union hat on, but you could see Union trying to avenge that 7-0 loss to Vancouver, or a rematch in 22 in MLS Cup against LAFC, and it would be at our place. So we'll see. But for me, in the East, you look at hell is real. You look at New York City, Charlotte, and our portion, or our little quadrant of the bracket. You look at Miami, Nashville, hell is real. Those teams, Columbus, Cincinnati, of course, let them beat up on each other, right, to see who gets out on that side. And then we'll see who gets out on our little section of the bracket too. So I think the draw, it's very enticing for the Philadelphia Union standpoint, where the only time they would have to go on the road, as you guys have kind of said already, is game 2 for the Chicago game in the first series. Chicago, I was looking at some of the possession numbers, and, we're hovering around 48%. They're at 49%. I'm just curious, if they sit back, José, the mid-block, you and all of us like to go into the weeds a little bit tactically, but if they sit back and just say, hey, block of 6, 7, 8, and we're just going to play on the counterattack up top. Now, I don't know how much defending Kuipers is going to do up top at the number 9. We know the speed Bamba has on the left. Zinkernagel doesn't have the speed, has the quality, of course, but maybe not the speed of a Bamba. And then you have Gutierrez, who flies and has the fluidity to go all over the pitch. I'm just curious if they play on the counter against the Union in game 1 on the road, if that will aid to a successful night, with the Union playing the high line that we do, right, towards that midway line with Glesis Macania getting forward. I don't know how much you can rely on a Bamba or maybe somebody else joining from the midfield to fly and try to beat us. That's why I just don't see them like sitting with a big block. Again, I can be completely off on that, what Berhalter's going to do, because just what I've seen from them tactically, you have the numerical advantages on the width of a Gutman, like I mentioned, of a Dean, and look how much they got forward that aided their attack against Orlando. And I see them trying to do that against the Union. Can the Union exploit that space behind masterfully? That's where I see it. I think guys like, and it may be easy for me to say, but, I think guys like Jovan Lukic and Danley, they got to hold it down there. Curious, what our pressing structure looks like. We're going to let Elliott, Waterman, and others, whether they're at a 3 or a 5, or 3 or 4, play east to west, whether we pick up at the top of the circle where we hit them the first pass, maybe out of the back to the channels. That is different, a little bit different in the Charlotte game. We dropped a little bit deeper with our defensive structure than we have in prior games. So we'll see what the staff draws up. I'm really excited because I can tell you over the years, that's what I've really tried to pick up more on my calls and really relay that, especially now that I'm on radio, is tactically, how is the game changing? And try to explain it to maybe some of the casual listeners, other than just going through Dave to Todd to Jose. How are we shaping up? Where's the first line of the press starting? Because that's how we educate folks, right? You guys do a great job at that to some of our newer fans. And I try to do that, not just to help myself. I'll learn more of the advancements of the game, but also to our fabulous listeners and viewers as well. So Berhalter, respected coach, Bradley, respected coach. And the two are going to go at it with their staffs, and I'm excited what they're going to have for one another.
And we can't forget to mention, welcome back to Joe Bendick, too, who's also on Greg Berhalter's staff. So there's another storyline, too, not only Jack Elliott. So Joe Bendick, when he came to Subaru Park in August with Chicago, he was so nice. I mean, he said hello to everybody in the media. I'm sure he said hi to the fans and everything. So, yeah, don't forget about that storyline either. Joe Bendick, no longer a coach. He's no longer a goalie. He's a coach. So, Dave and Jose, I mean, this has been a fantastic show, just like it always is. And hopefully we got the fans hungry for this Sunday's playoff game between Philadelphia Union and Chicago Fire. Jose, go ahead and let everybody know. They can see it there, but if they're not following you yet, where can people go ahead and check out all your work? And hopefully you have an assignment this weekend from MLS.
Yes, you can find me at Jose R. Nunes 91. All of my writing and places you can find me are there in my bio. And yes, I do have an assignment on site for any potential Union story for MLSsoccer.com. So the league is invested on this one for all the really, really good reasons behind it, including Joe Bendick. Todd, thanks for the reminder. Coming back, I'll make sure to mention it should we have a story there to tell. But just such an exciting matchup, and I'm just so glad that it's happening at Subaru Park from the get-go, and the rest of the playoffs, as Dave mentioned, hopefully run through Chester. Selfishly, it would just be so much fun to have MLS Cup in Chester.
Absolutely. Dave, where can people go ahead and follow you on social media, and go ahead, plug the radio?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. First off, thanks for having me on to both of you. As I said, to start the program tonight, big fans of both of your work. Continue to do what you guys do best. And I'll be following you both throughout the playoff run for however long it goes, and obviously the rest of your great work. Thank you, Shane, for the kind note too, and Valerie and everybody else that had some kind words to say with me coming on with Jose and Todd as well. Thank you all. Look forward to seeing the park. Tomorrow, I do want to plug something that I already put a little bit on social media. I'm actually going to be on 3 different morning shows. We talked about maybe we need a little bit more visibility, right? 3 different morning shows tomorrow with Sebastian Letou and maybe some guests as well. Our morning is very busy, so I won't be sleeping long tonight because I have a little distance to get into town. But at 7 7 o'clock or 7:15 a.m. around there. I'll be on Fox 29's Good Day Philadelphia program with our morning show promoting the Union in the playoffs. At 8:45 around that time, I'm going to be on PHL 17 in the Wynwood neighborhood of Philadelphia for their morning news program. And around 11:45 a.m., I believe we're going to be on Philly Live, part of NBC 10's programming, the extension of their morning show into the afternoon. So Fox, PHL, and NBC giving some love to the Union. And, I'm happy to continue to tell the story to a lot of people that maybe don't follow us. And look, I wish they all did all year round. It is what it is. The same thing with the radio stations. I wish they talked about us more. That's a whole nother topic. But I'm grateful that we'll get the opportunity to do that tomorrow with some folks. Our radio broadcast on Sunday can be heard starting at 5:30, a longer pregame. By the way, kick is not until 5:55. So 5:30, our pregame will start on 97.5 The Fanatic. Can also, watch the game and with our radio call on Apple TV, choosing the home radio option with Seb and I on the play-by-play for this matchup with our wonderful crew. Probably will be an option. I don't know for sure, guys, but for folks outside the market, you can download the free 97.5 The Fanatic app to hear us. Also, we may be on Sirius XM. I don't have confirmation on that, but we may be on channel 157. Want to take our local feed for that as well, and if not, we'll just be on the local call. And my social media handles are at Dave Leno TV, but I'm big followers of all your work, more so than my little.
Oh man, did we lose Dave? We might have lost Dave, but yes, I appreciate the kind words there from Dave. I'm assuming he was saying he appreciates our work. It's always nice to hear, but yeah, I mean, Dave Leno is the real star of the show, so it's always great getting Dave onto the show talking Philadelphia Union soccer. And like Jazz had said, shout out to everybody in the chat commenting. Appreciate you guys. You guys are always the best part of the show. We know you have plenty other things you guys could be doing on a Thursday evening, and we appreciate you guys checking out the podcast. So if you guys aren't checking out the podcast, if you guys want to follow on social media, follow at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcast, go ahead and check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/freekickpod, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. The YouTube channel also upload the goals breakdown videos, so you guys can check them out there. And if you guys want to follow my writing, my podcast, the podcast, or the goals breakdown video, you can go ahead to thefreekick.substack.com. Again, thank you guys so much for joining on this Thursday night, checking out this episode, and just talking all things Philadelphia Union. Can't wait to see Subaru Park be packed on Sunday evening. And the good thing is too, right, that it's not a 7:30 kickoff, a 7:37 kickoff. So people should get home at a reasonable time, and hopefully you're going home with a Philadelphia Union victory. And then the match goes to Chicago the following weekend. And can't wait to go ahead and see what that has in store. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.